Guys. Okay, let's see here. Oh, where'd my stuff go? There it is. Welcome. Uh, Welcome in, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today. We're exploring career transition into business ownership and how to get started. It is 12:27. We'll get started here in 3 or 4 minutes. If you'd like to go ahead in the chat, put your name and what you expect to get out of this webinar, and we will certainly try to address that. Welcome in. I'm not sure where I see my chat. Hmm. Oh, Lordy. There it goes. Let's see. Welcome in, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We'll get started here in 3 minutes. If you go ahead, if you'd like to, you can go ahead and put your name and your business in the chat and what you'd like to get out of this webinar. We will certainly try to accomplish that today. Everybody's quiet today. Hey, Angela, welcome. No business yet. Welcome. Hey, Darcy. Okay, we'll get started here in 1 more minute. Welcome, everyone. Great. Hi, Pamela. Welcome. I'm trying to start a business with my sister. Welcome. Okay, it is 12:31. So I think we'll go ahead and get started, guys. You ready? Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, which is exploring career transition into business ownership and how to get started. My name is Andrea Kelly. I am a volunteer here at SCORE Charlotte. I'm just going to take a few minutes, or not even that, to talk about SCORE, who we are, and what we do. So we are a national volunteer organization. We have over 10,000 volunteers nationwide. We have been in existence for almost 60 years, and we are funded in part by the Small Business Administration. If you can see from my slide that, excuse me. If you can see from my slide, the services that we offer, we offer confidential mentoring, education programs, and community outreach events. We host several webinars a month subject matter experts from marketing, again, from startups to accounting, pretty much anything that would help you get your business started. So in North Carolina, we have several chapters, Charlotte, Raleigh, Asheville. We are the largest here. The Charlotte chapter, we have over 90 volunteers on staff. And if you're interested in finding your chapter, you just go to score.org. So again, with that, I would like to introduce our presenters today, which are Joe Forbidusi and Chip Myers. They are with Entrepreneur Source, and we are going to go ahead and talk about career transition. I will then now turn it over to Chip and Joe. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Are we able to see our slides?
I do not see your slides. Do I have to stop share? No.
Yeah, it's probably stop yours, maybe.
I don't think so. I think you should be able to share, I think. I normally don't stop share.
There we go.
Perfect. Let me see.
Perfect. So everybody you seeing our slides then now?
I do not, but that might just be me.
Yeah, I can see it, Joe.
All right. So everybody I'm seeing yours, but it looks like everybody else is seeing ours. So
yes,
perfect.
you're perfect. All right. You're perfect.
All
Go
right.
ahead.
We're going to go ahead and we're going to get started then.
Perfect.
So thank you, Andrea. I'm Joe Forbidusi, and as she mentioned, Chip Myers. We're going to do this together. And just real quick about ourselves, we'll introduce ourselves. And again, I'm Joe Forbidusi. I transitioned out of the corporate world into business ownership probably about 10 years ago, I guess. So I was a corporate executive, and I actually went through this experience and was acquired my first business. So it was about 10 years ago that I transitioned. So I'm going to let Chip introduce himself, and then I'm going to go ahead and get started and start going through it.
Yeah, similar experience to Joe. I about 27 years in the corporate world, leading sales teams, sales organizations, and I had always kind of in the back of my mind had the idea of being in business for myself, but never had the confidence, never felt I was really capable of it, and unfortunately didn't have the resources that are available to people right now. But my hand was forced about 8 years ago, and you never know what you're capable of until you run out of choices. So like Joe, I went through this same experience with a coach here at the Entrepreneur Source and kind of quickly made that transition. And now Joe and I are both independent owners of the Entrepreneur Source, and we both work around the country helping people go through the same process we did, which is understanding business ownership as a potential career path and how you get from point A to point B.
Perfect. Thanks, Chip. Well, I'm going to go ahead and give everybody the answer to the question, and then Chip and I are going to walk you through how you get to the answer. The answer is, as you think about exploring career transition into business ownership, how to get started, the number one thing is education. So that's what we do. We're educators. We help educate clients. And that's really what you want to do is you want to get educated. So I'm glad you're here today. So the first thing is education. The second thing is going to be alignment. The key is really aligning with the right businesses that are right for you, because not every business is right for each individual person. So the goal really is you're learning and getting educated, is to get educated on the businesses that are appropriate and accurate for yourselves. So just real quick about the Entrepreneur Source. I know that Andrea said that Score is 60 years old. We're not quite that old. We're 41 years old. So the Entrepreneur Source has been around a long time. So we're a career ownership coaching franchise. And as the Chip mentioned, we're both small business owners and franchisees. So really all that means is that we help educate clients to explore whether business ownership is the path for them to consider. Consistently, we're ranked number one in categories. So, and we've been doing this a long time, and we're actually the 2026 just came out, and we're number one again. But the first two questions I'm going to ask you to think about, and we're going to talk about as we move forward here, is what's your why? Why are you here today? So that's the number one question. What's motivating you? What's going on? Is there a catalyst occurring in your life or in your corporate world that's encouraging you or hoping that you transition into business ownership or explore, at least exploring it? So what's your why? I'll share with you my why is this quote right here: control your own destiny or someone else will control it for you. And that's really what happened to me. As I mentioned, I was in the corporate world. I was asked to leave the corporate world for, I think, the fourth time, maybe about 10 years ago. And I decided I'd had enough of being asked to leave. So I decided I wanted to take control of my own destiny. So really the key is here is what's your why? What's your reasoning for? Because that's going to be the foundation as you start to explore and get educated on whether business ownership is a path for you or not. The second thing I would encourage you to think about and contemplate if you haven't already, and what we call the North Star. So the North Star is where you want to go. The why is why you want to leave the corporate world or transition into being self-sufficient. And the North Star is what you want to get accomplished. So again, we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but those would be the first two questions that I would encourage you to think about. So again, as I mentioned, what's your why? A lot of times, Chip and I have heard from clients, it might be the job insecurity, the idea of being the fear of being laid off or downsized. You might just be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Your values don't align. Or maybe you just have reached your potential and you don't feel like you're getting the max out of what you can be in the income that you want to achieve. Excuse me. So really, one of the things that you want to consider as you think about transitioning into business ownership, or at least exploring and getting educated, are these four big elements. And we're going to dive into this a little bit more, but these are four big benefits of being an entrepreneur. But again, each of these benefits will come to different degrees and different levels, and they'll be applied differently. So the first one is obviously freedom. Being an entrepreneur, you're going to have the freedom to be in control of your own schedule. You're going to be able to control your own income potential and make decisions. Flexibility. A lot of times clients will, this is a key goal for a client, is flexibility, is being able to adapt their business to their lifestyle. And then fulfillment, and then growth potential. Again, the key is I've talked about earlier, is education. So part of the education that you want to have and that you want to get and that we provide is going to be defining what each of these characteristics look like for you, and then aligning with the right businesses. So again, the key, as I mentioned earlier, is education and alignment. So how do we do that? So as I mentioned, again, Chip and I, we don't sell anything. We just educate. We're coaches. And we get there because the Entrepreneur Source has been doing this for 41 years. And it's really all of the experiences, the processes, the things that we provide are simply an opportunity for our clients to explore, learn, and educate themselves on what might be right for them. And keep in mind, as Chip and I speak about franchises today, we're not speaking about fast food, French fries, and restaurants. Those are franchises, and we do work with some, but the majority of our clients are not looking for those types of businesses. They're looking for other types of lifestyle businesses. And as Chip mentioned, the Entrepreneur Source is a franchise. So what we do and why we do what we do is because it's a lifestyle choice for us, and it's a coaching franchise. But one of the things that Chip's going to walk you through today, and we'll go through this together, is really how to get started. So these are three of the exercises that we're going to dive a little deeper into, and whether you utilize the exercises that we provide or you come up with your own, but these are important. And the very first one that you're going to want to think about is writing your own success story. We call it the U 2.0. What's the next version of yourself? And that's where you're going to have the opportunity to kind of do some self-reflecting. And it's very important that you decide and define, what are your financial goals? What are your personal goals? What are your professional goals? What are you trying to get accomplished? We'll talk about and identify your fears and concerns. We'll talk about, what do you want more of? So many times, clients and individuals, they want to not have something. They want to talk about what they don't want, as opposed to talking about what they do want. And that's one of the things that we encourage, and I would encourage you. What do you want more of? If you're going to decide to be in franchise business or career transition, what is it that you're really wanting to get more of? And then we're going to talk about, you have the opportunity to take a self-assessment. A self-assessment is really about what makes you unique. Again, all of us show up differently. We all have different characteristics and attributes, and each business will value or devalue some of them depending. And so it's important to understand what makes you unique. And then the third category, or third exercise that you should consider, is business characteristics. As I mentioned, all businesses aren't equal. They are very different, and they are many different industries, many different environments, many different rules that an owner plays. So again, we'll talk about, and you should define and clearly understand what's right for you. The second part, or the second phase that we provide education on, which you're going to want to have yourself as you go through and learn about whether business is right for you, is called discovery and validation. So you really want to take time and educate yourself through discovery. That's discovering new things about that business, the systems, the operations, the marketing, etc. And then the validation. You want to be able to speak to somebody who's actually doing the business and have done the business, has transitioned. So you're really going to want to take advantage of that. This is also this quote before I turn it over to Chip is another one of my whys. Build your own dreams, or someone else will hire you to build their dreams. And that really sums up the corporate world, quite honestly. If you're in the corporate world, you're building someone else's dreams and you're not really building your own. And that would be another reason why you'd want to consider maybe exploring entrepreneurship. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chip, and he's going to walk you through and dive a little deeper into each of those first couple exercises that I was referring to.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So, when a lot of people start considering getting into business for themselves, they tend to run at things that they are passionate about or things that they know. All right. And neither one of those is inherently bad. But we just encourage people to slow down a little bit and think more, right? The things that you're passionate about may matter to you and they may matter to you now, but down the road, they may not matter to you. And the reality is that the world doesn't always care what you're passionate about, and sometimes you can't adequately monetize businesses like that. For anybody that is thinking about business ownership in any format, I would encourage them to read a book by a gentleman named Michael Gerber, which is called The E-Myth and The E-Myth Revisited. Highly, highly recommended. But taking the opportunity to kind of step back and ask yourself some questions about what matters to you most? How do you define success? What do you want your career to provide you? Those are questions that we never ask ourselves, and very few people ever ask us. But when you can step back about that and get a little bit of clarity, then you're starting to think about a business as a tool that serves you rather than something you've got to work for. So one of the first steps we always want people to do is just think about that vision for their life and their future. And we do have a worksheet that we take people through, and we do call it U 2.0. And conceptually, it's the idea that everything up to this point in your career has been the 1.0 version of you. And what would you like that 2.0 version to look like? And it's a great thought starter for defining your financial, personal, and professional goals. And there's one place in there that's kind of a forward-looking statement, and it says, hey, if you've got an idea what your vision is for your future, where do you need to be in a year to feel good about your progress? Okay, because look, the reality is getting into business for yourself, it's a long game, and year one is probably not going to look like what year 2, 3, 4, 5 look like. So think a little bit further down the road. Feel good about the progress that you're going to make. And then take some time to step back and get real honest with yourself about, okay, what are the things that I'm scared of? What are the dangers? What are the obstacles I might face? What are the fears? And look, this comes into play whether you're thinking about staying in the corporate world or you've already made the decision to get into entrepreneurship. What is it that you're worried about? Maybe it's one of the things I hear all the time now from a lot of clients is they're worried about the artificial intelligence, and that's coming in to a lot more jobs. And is my job going to be safe long term? People that are in the job world always bring up the age thing, right? When you're thinking about being in business for yourself, it's normal to have a lot of fears. If you don't, I would be worried about you. It might be, the fear of, it might be the fear of failure. It might be the fear of success. It might be, can you afford to do this? It might be, am I going to have support? But the important part is just to come to terms with all of those things, write those fears down, write those dangers down, and come up with a plan to address them. Because once you can start moving past that, then you get to focus on the things that really matter to you, the opportunities in life. And even when you think there aren't any of those, there always are. The things that are important to you personally and professionally. Maybe it's more time with family. Maybe it's just really owning the calendar. For me, that was a big thing, is just I had been traveling 160 nights a year. I never wanted to be on an airplane again. I wanted to work from home. I wanted to be really present. I wanted to control my own schedule rather than having my schedule control me. Sometimes it might be financial. Sometimes it might be long term. But what are the things that matter to you? And then because you're going to be making a transition and you're going to be doing something new and different, what are the strengths that you have? What are those things that you can lean on? Yes, skills matter, but you can learn new skills. The strengths are more things like your attitude, right? Do you have a bias towards action? Are you someone that runs at obstacles or do you shy away from them? Do you have a really strong support network? All of those are the strengths, and those are the things that you're going to lean on as you move forward. Go ahead to the next slide, Joe. Goals is one of these topics that used to fill bookstores when bookstores were around, right? There are thousands of books about goals, and it's always so big picture that it's really hard to grasp. But it's really important that you take stock again of those goals because, look, at the end of the day, a business is nothing more than the vehicle you're using to get you to those goals. So get clarity on that, right? And we encourage people to break your goals down into 4 different buckets. And people will want these buckets filled in varying amounts, right? Income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity are the buckets we talk about. We're very acronym heavy, so we refer to it as ILWE, but income is obvious, right? It's the earnings, whether that's through employment, whether that's through business, it could be through investments. Lifestyle is oftentimes overlooked, but what are your lifestyle goals, right? And be honest about it. Hey, if you want to only work Monday through Friday, then you only want to work Monday through Friday. Your goals have to matter to you. Don't buy into all the belief that, entrepreneurship has to be 120 hours a week and you got to wake up at 5 a.m. every morning and take an ice bath. That's out there if you want it, but what's important to you? The other things, wealth and equity, these are a little bit longer term. Wealth is loosely defined as your net worth, right? And sometimes that's the big goal for people. They're trying to retire and they've got a number, they've got a target off in the distance and they need to build that. Sometimes you're in good shape there. Maybe that's not one of the buckets that you need filled. Equity is a component of wealth, right? Equity is the assets that you've accumulated. It's it's your house. Sometimes if your net worth goal is very large, you might need equitable assets to close that gap. And maybe that's the purpose of a business for you, is to build an equitable asset so at some point down the road you can have an exit event and fund your retirement. But there are some questions that you can ask yourself. And this really it is about what you want and what you want your life to look like. Because I will tell you, um, with the right systems in place and the right support, business ownership can support your life, not take it over. And I will tell you that when your career supports your calling and supports your vision and values, that's when everything changes. So get real honest. What are your income goals? Again, realistically, your 3 and 5 year goals are probably going to end up looking very different than your 1 year goals. Understand what your goals are, understand what your needs are. That's going to really come into play in year 1. But this is also a time to be unrealistic. If your goals aren't big enough to scare you a little bit, hey, your goals are not big enough, right? So setting income goals is the first step, and there's a lot of studies that have been done that say that's really the key step to actually achieving the goals. And again, the lifestyle component is really important because you might be running after money, but if the business that you have doesn't support the life that you want, you'll burn yourself out. So those two things do work in conjunction with each other. And then the wealth and equity goals, right? These are the things that are going to allow you to make the life choices down the road and the freedom to do what makes you happy when you want. The last point on that, and leave this slide up. The other important point of this is when you have clarity on these goals, this becomes a way to evaluate businesses as those potential vehicles. Otherwise, everything is subjective, right? And you can fall down that hole of chasing passions. But if you have specific targets around things like income and lifestyle and wealth and equity, then you can use those as yardsticks measuring how a business can help you achieve those things. And if it can, then it becomes a good option for you. If a business cannot get you to your goals, it may not be a good option no matter how much you love the business. Okay, go ahead, Joe. The other thing Joe talked about was this assessment, okay? And a lot of people are familiar with this. It's sometimes referred to as Success Insights. It's sometimes referred to as DISC. DISC is the common name for it, and DISC is very prominent in the corporate world. I used DISC when I was a hiring manager forever ago. I used it wrong, but now I understand it a little bit better. But this is more a tool for you than it is for us. Okay. And DISC measures these four normal aspects of human behavior that we all have in varying degrees. And it does show how you show up, how other people perceive you. When you walk in the room, what do other people see? And then more importantly, deep down, why you show up that way. So it's observable behavioral characteristics, and DISC is just an acronym for these four aspects that it measures: dominance, influence, steadiness, and compliance. And we all have these in varying degrees. And those four components create they create a makeup that's unique to you. And it explains how a person does what they do. The great thing is there's no such thing as right or wrong in DISC. There's not a good profile, there's not a bad profile. It's just how you're wired, and what it'll give you a sense of. It'll give you a sense of what are the things that you're going to be most naturally effective or comfortable doing, and what are the things that are going to challenge you a little bit. What's going to give you energy? What's going to create stress? It's impossible to avoid everything that's going to stress you out, but you want to minimize that. And if you can find yourself in an environment that supports your natural style and you're not having to exert energy and effort into being something that you're not, all your energy and effort's going towards your success. So again, DISC measures these four factors. Dominance is just how somebody handles problems and challenges. Influence is all about people and contacts. Steadiness is about pace and consistency, and compliance, or some people will call it conscientiousness. It's just procedures and constraints. Again, there's no right or wrong. When we work with people, the more we understand what somebody's style is and how they handle these situations, we're able to coach them through some obstacles that will come up and some things that might challenge you. But again, it's more for you understanding what are the ideal environments in which you can just be yourself.
All right. Well, thank you, Chip. So as you can see, the first two steps that Chip walked you through is that education, and we're leading towards that alignment. You have to get educated. You have to educate yourself around the U 2.0. You also have to realize and understand what makes you unique and different, the DISC. And so then the next exercise, or the next step, if you would, in the process that you should consider and how to consider it, is really what's the right business for you, and what are the types of characteristics of that business that would be right for you. So the third thing that we'll talk about and that you would have an exercise on and you should consider is, again, those key attributes. What kind of business role do you want to play? Are you looking to be semi-absentee, which there's many definitions of what semi-absentee looks like, but what's your definition? There's owner operator, and there's many clients that we work with that say, hey, I want to keep my corporate job while I own a business and transition to it. And none of them are right, wrong, or indifferent, as Chip had mentioned. It's simply what's right for you, and does that business structure itself to allow you to achieve it. We just happen to work with over 250 different franchise businesses that are in every industry out there and every area of interest. So again, the key is to think about, again, where's your areas of interest, where's your areas of passion, does it align with your goals, and how's that align with your goals? We'll also talk about different business environments, whether it be a work from home business environment, virtual, home based, brick and mortar, whatever it might be, mobile. Chip and I's business, this business right here that we own, is a virtual business, and we work from home. We also can do it in person if we choose to. So we have that ability. But again, what's the right environment for you? And then we'll talk about initial investment. Every business is going to have that initial investment. In a franchise business, you actually know what that initial investment is going to be up front. There's going to be an investment range, and then there's going to be the ongoing costs that'll be associated to it. So you take some of the guesswork out of it, but you're going to learn about it. And what you'll find is, and there's three big components in that initial investment. One is going to be that franchise fee. That's where you're buying the business, you own the business, it's your business. The second big element is going to be the startup package, and every franchise business is going to provide you a startup package. So that's going to be your training, your marketing, your supplies, anything and everything you need to get going on day one is going to be a part of that startup package. And then the third big element that they factor into that initial investment is going to be working capital. They want to make sure a business has the money to run and sustain itself until it becomes profitable. So that business can have working capital anywhere from a month up to a year, usually a month to 6 months. But the franchise will do this also. One is so it's very clear and understandable what it's going to take to launch that business, but also if you're choosing to finance your business, you're able to finance that working capital. So that really helps a lot of individuals where most individuals are looking to finance their business. They can do it and they can finance their working capital. So they're not worried about 3 or 6 months or a month down the road. Do I have to take more money out of my savings account to keep my business going? Though they have money in the business, and you can actually, in most cases, finance additional working capital over and above that. And then the third big thing that we're going to talk about, and you would talk about, goes back to what Chip talked about. There's 3 buckets that a franchise looks to fill. One is going to be a financial bucket. One is going to be what does success characteristics look like of their successful owners, which is why you'd want to understand what are the successful owners look like, and do you look like them from a skill set standpoint and attribute. But then the third element is really going to be what we call, and they call, the day in the life of an owner. And that's really where some people might define it as passion, but really it's what are you doing on a day in and day out basis? Are you, for example, my first business, what I did is I managed a team of technicians. I solved problems, I project managed, and I met with clients and customers. So that's what I did on a daily basis. That's what I like to do, and that's what I enjoy doing. This particular business that Chip and I do, what we do and what I enjoy doing is helping others. We enjoy helping others, educate them, and seeing what might be possible. So that's another version of the day in the life of a passion. But really, the goal really is to understand what is the day in the life that you're looking for in a business, and is that applicable to that particular business? So as I mentioned, there's 3 big things, and I challenge all my clients, and I would challenge all of you to think about this as you're thinking about exploring career transition into business ownership. Passion, practical versus time. And so really what I would ask you to think about is how do you rank these 1, 2, and 3? And then how do you define them? So how do you rank passion? How do you rank return on investment? And how do you rank time investment? Time investment meaning how much time are you willing to invest in the business, and how much time, a realistic time frame to get to your income goal. What I would ask you to think about is, again, how do you define them, 1, 2, and 3, and quantify them? In some examples, for example, what a passion might look like is, as Chip mentioned earlier, I like to eat, I like to cook, so I want to own a restaurant. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's great if that's right for you. But you have to realize then that maybe that time investment is going to be much greater than you think, and then the return on investment might be a little lower. And you have to understand that. So that's why you have to rank them 1, 2, and 3. I'll give you a personal example. My first business, as I mentioned, what I was doing on a daily basis, but that wasn't my passion. I was actually, my first business was recycling cooking oil. And I was a executive in fashion merchandising for almost 30 years. So my passion wasn't waking up one day saying I wanted to own an oil recycling business. My passion was I wanted to own a business and get to the goals that I set for myself. And I wanted to do what I enjoy doing, which was traveling, family time, volunteering, things like that. So the business really was a means to an end. It allowed me the financial stability and also the time availability to achieve the goals that I've set forth, which was my personal and professional goals. But the good news was it was also aligned really well with my passions as far as what I'd like to do on a daily basis. So again, I would encourage you to think about how do you define them, and then how do you rank these? Because these are the 3 buckets that each business is going to fulfill. Excuse me. Oops. So really what happens is the first part of education is really kind of self-awareness and self-reflecting, as we talked about, and kind of defining kind of what's your North Star, what are some of the key things that you want to get accomplished, and what do you bring to the table in order to get there. The second part of the education really evolves around discovery and validation. So Chip mentioned earlier, once you kind of have a game plan in place and you have your goals and so forth, you want to be able to start benchmarking them and learning and comparing and contrasting with various businesses on what can be possible for you. We actually call it discovery and validation. So discovery is simply you start meeting with those businesses that align with you, and you start discovering more and new things, right? You start educating yourself on the financials, educating on operations, marketing, training, website designs, client acquisition, et cetera, all the components of a business. That's what you want to learn about. And then the validation part is where you start meeting with franchisees, people that are actually doing the business. So you can learn from somebody. You can talk to one or talk to 100. And the goal really is you want to learn from them and understand is what they do and how they do it. Is that something that you see yourself being able to do in order to be successful? So this is just kind of the process that you would go through as far as reviewing the financials. If the business is right for you, you would be awarded it. And that's really, again, another reason why we go through these exercises with clients and why you'd want to consider going through them yourself in order to learn about a franchise business, because you cannot buy a franchise business. It has to be awarded to you. And they usually only award it to individuals they feel can be successful in that particular business. So it's really an opportunity, again, to learn about things that are relevant and align with your goals. So another part of the education you want to get familiar with that we actually provide, and that many sources do provide, is how do I fund this business? How do I finance it? And these are just three big components. There's many other ways of financing a business, but these are the three larger ones. One is through an SBA government loan. So SBA government loan, basically, you would need to have a credit score of around 690 or better. They have loans, they call them express loans, up to 150,000. And there you would have a 10% cash injection. Over 150,000 would be 20%. So for example, if you're looking at a business, the initial investment is 50,000, you would come up with $5,000 of your own money. So a lot of times clients say, I'd rather not come up with any of my own money. I'd rather use someone else's money. They may look at unsecured loans. Unsecured loans are simply loans that you can just need to have a credit score of 700 or above. Higher the credit score, lower the interest rates. And there, in an unsecured loan, you're able to actually finance 100% of that business. And you can actually finance over 100% if you choose to add in some application fees and loan fees or additional working capital. So you're able to actually finance a business with no money down. Another key availability of financing a business would be what's considered a Rob rollover. ROBS, rollover for a business startup. So that's simply where you would take a portion of your retirement account, 401k, IRAs, etc., and you would take a portion of that, roll it into a corporation, and basically you're self-funding. So a lot of times when clients want to invest in themselves, they're investing in their future, and they're wanting to do it interest-free. They will do that through a Rob rollover. But I would encourage you, as you start to learn about financing a business, there's many different ways. We actually provide education around it, and we provide referrals, which are financial institutions, which will help you get educated. But I also know that SCORE has a lot of webinars and support on that as well. So there's a lot of options for a client to learn about financing a business. So a lot of times Chip and I'll get asked about how do I know if I found the right business? Well, the first thing we'll say is there is no such thing as a perfect business. So if you're looking for a perfect business, you're not going to find it. So I would encourage you to kind of realize that. But really, why do we encourage clients to get educated about a franchise business? I know a lot of clients have their own business ideas, which is great. We work with clients like that as well, or they may even already have a business up and running that they want to just learn more about how do they scale that business or how do they improve that business. And that's why you'd want to learn from a franchise. A franchise is a proven system. They're all proven, they're all successful in their own way, and they all come with the processes in place. And that's really why you'd want to learn, at least from that perspective, of what does success look like, what are the key characteristics, and what are the systems that I may need in order to be successful. Part of really what we provide is this right here. The ability for our clients to be in a stress-free, environment-free, cost-free, no obligation, really in an environment that's conducive to learning. And really, most people are uncomfortable. As Chip said earlier, we all have fears about various things. We all have anxieties or worries about something. But this experience allows you to really go through and get educated and start to feel comfortable with the uncomfortable. And that's really a key characteristic as well. A lot of times what I encourage, and I would encourage you to think about, is this last 20 or 30%. And what I mean by that, and what we mean by that, is every franchise business, for example, because they're a proven system, proven model, they're going to get you to the starting point. And that starting point is going to be, 70, 80% starting point. And then that last 20 to 30% of what success may look like, or does look like, is going to be you, the individual. The individual, you, the owner, is what's going to ultimately make that business successful. And that's really what you want to learn about as you're getting educated. When you're talking with various businesses and you're talking with various franchisees in this case, is you want to learn about who they are, what do they bring to the table, what have they done to be successful, and do you see yourself being like them? If you see yourself being like them, then it's a great opportunity for you to continue to learn more. If you don't see yourself like them, then I would say run. And no matter what the financial return would be. I'll give you an example of that, a personal example. When I was looking at businesses the first time when I was transitioning, I started looking at businesses that seemed too good to be true. I was going to make all this money. It was going to be far exceed my return on investment. Then I started to learn more, and I realized I was going to have to. Chip mentioned earlier, I was going to have to work about 80 to 100 hours a week. All of a sudden, it didn't feel so good. Then I realized as I learned more that it was a business that I was going to have to knock on doors, 100 doors a day practically. I'm exaggerating, but 100 doors a day and make 100 phone calls a day. And I realized that is not who I am and not what I'm about. So even though it filled one of the buckets as an example of the return on investment, it didn't fill the other buckets for me. So again, it's why it's so important to kind of not be running towards something, but to arrive at something. And that's a key difference that we coach on, is that we're not business brokers. We're not smart enough to figure out what's the right business for you. And we're never going to tell you we're going to match it to the right business. We'll tell you we're going to arrive at the business that's right for you to learn about, because that's what we do. And that's what I would encourage you to do, is figure out your game plan through these exercises or versions of them, and then arrive at where you need to be. Don't predetermine, but arrive to where you need to be. The last statistic that and I would encourage you to chat GPT this or Google it or whatever. I find this kind of interesting, but it's pretty accurate, is that approximately 85 to 95% or 94% of all franchise businesses succeed in the first 3 years and remain open after 5, while approximately 50 to 60% of non-franchise businesses fail and close in the first 3 years. So non-franchise businesses, 50 to 60% fail and close within the first 3 years. About 85 to 94% of franchise businesses remain open or considered successful. And there's two big elements to that. And these are the things that you want to learn about. The number one reason why a franchise business remains open and is more successful than a non-franchise business is the level of support and guidance and training and coaching in every aspect that they provide you. And that's what you want to learn about. Franchises are designed to fill the gaps. A small business owner can only fill so many gaps. They can't fill all the gaps. And that's one of the reasons why that they may fail, because they can't do all things and be all things to all people. But that's where a franchise comes in and fills the gap. The other reason is going to be the financial part. Most non-franchise businesses will close in the first 3 years because they don't have the financial wherewithal in order to sustain itself through the initial launch period. Or it's when they start to try to grow their business, they don't have the available financing in order to buy the resources or pay for the resources that are needed. And that's where, again, another advantage for a franchise is you know exactly what your initial investment costs are, you know exactly what the ongoing costs are going to be, and you're able to validate that with true franchisees who've been experiencing it. Again, please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying non-franchises cannot be successful. They are and can be. But the point being is you really want to understand and make sure you have a good, solid footing. And the best way of learning that is through a franchise business, whether you choose to go through a franchise or out on your own. Oops, excuse me. So another thing I get asked a lot, and Chip does too, is if this is such a great thing, being an entrepreneur is such a great thing, why doesn't more people do it? And that's a great question. And the answer really is this right here. Fear is the number one emotional detour that keeps people from making life-changing decisions and reaching their goals. We refer to it as false evidence appearing real. So fear, the number one emotional detour. If you think about it, why somebody doesn't change a job, why somebody doesn't buy a new house, why somebody doesn't move to a new neighborhood or to a new state, why doesn't somebody get married, why doesn't somebody start a family? Everybody has reasons, and the reasons always are fear, basically. When this happens, I'll do that. Okay, and that never happens, so therefore they never achieve it. So really what we talk about is false evidence appearing real. And it goes back to what Chip mentioned earlier, which is so important, is that you're truly honest with yourself and identify, what am I really worried about? What are the fears that I have? What are my concerns that I have? And really be honest in order to build education and questions around it and get answers. A lot of times you might get it validated that you're absolutely right. In some cases, you may find a different perspective or a different outlook about it. It actually, there was a study, and there's multiple studies done. I just pulled the most recent one from the National Library of Medicine that actually said that 92% of all things that we worry about, that we're anxious about, or fearful of never happen. So 92% of all the things that we think and we worry about and we dream up in our heads never happen. So only 8% do. So I think that's a staggering statistic. And so as Chip mentioned earlier, there's lots of different types of fears, but really the top three fears is the fear of change. Individuals are in their comfort zone. I have a corporate job. I don't like it, but I get paid every Friday, so I'm just going to keep showing up because I don't want to go through the hassle of change. The fear of the unknown. Hey, if I go out on my own, am I going to be successful or not? What's that going to look like? Or the fear of finance. When I have more money, I'll do it. Well, you're never probably going to have more money, but the good news is you don't need to have a lot of money in order to start a business. And really, I love this quote also because this is kind of indicative of what this is all talking about fear. Is courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the assessment that something else is more important than fear. And it goes back to what Chip said earlier. We both have fears. We still have concerns. You're never going to get rid of those. And if you don't have them, you're probably not being honest with yourself. But the idea in this quote talks about is you have to have the courage to say, my lifestyle, my goals, my North Star is far more important than these fears that I'm allowing to get in the way. And I'm going to push through the fears in order to give myself an opportunity to educate. Again, this is all about education. This is not about making decisions or making commitments or choices. It is simply becoming more informed and more educated so you can make better life choices. This is a chart that kind of sums up again kind of what we've been talking about here is that you can see in order to get to the growth zone, you've got to get out of the comfort zone. And in order to get anywhere, you've got to go through the fear zone. We all have them. So in order to get to a growth, you've got to get out of your comfort zone, experience some fears, learn about it, get educated. And when you start learning, then you're going to start growing. And that's really what the key is to finding the transition into business ownership is give yourself permission to dream and learn and educate and push through the fears and learn. And then you'll find out whether the growth is going to be there or not for you, or if it's the right path. Chip and I work with a lot of clients that career ownership or business ownership is not the right path for them, but they never would have known it if they didn't go down the path. And so that's what I would encourage you to give yourself permission to learn and explore and get educated, whether you utilize our services or you go out on your own. But it's important that you give yourself that permission. One of the last things I'll offer to you to think about is, again, why you'd want to at least educate yourself on franchise businesses. Because you're in business for yourself, but you're not by yourself. That's, again, another one of the reasons why a franchise is much more successful than a non-franchise. In a non-franchise, you're in business by yourself and you're looking around for support. And sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. But in a franchise business, is always going to be there for you. What you have to learn about is the level of support that they give you. Is it going to fill the gaps the way you want them to be filled? And that goes back to the alignment. You want to align with businesses that will give you the most opportunities to be successful in kind of who you are and where you are and where you want to go. One last thing I'll talk about before I kind of talk about next steps or the last kind of steps is a lot of times there's a misnomer about a franchise where a lot of times clients will say, I'm not interested in learning about a franchise because they're very restrictive and they don't allow you to do what I want to do and all those kinds of things. In some cases, that's actually very true. Some franchises are very restrictive and they have very strict procedures in which you need to follow. I would offer to you that most franchises are not that way. Most franchises will provide you guardrails to keep you from falling off the road. And that's what a franchise is designed to do. But those guardrails are in different spots. And that's where you really want to learn is where do I want to be? What kind of guardrails do I expect? And I will tell you that I'm a highly creative individual, innovative. I don't like restrictions. I don't like certain things. And I found franchises that allowed me to give me the support, fill the gaps that I was looking for, and be able to give me the creativity and innovation and all the things that I wanted to do and how I wanted to run my business. So don't let that be an obstacle. Again, that's a misnomer. A lot of times we put up these obstacles in our minds to prohibit us from learning. So just a little bit kind of what next steps are. Again, this is something that we provide our clients. We just wanted to share it with you so you guys are aware of that there are such services out there if you choose to utilize us, is that we create an educational portal. So what we do for all of our clients is we create an educational portal. And in that educational portal would be the 3 exercises that we've talked about. These are the 2 that Chip talked about. And this is the business ownership exercise that I've talked about. And in this portal, you'll find some other educational items in there, podcasts, videos, articles, things about franchising, entrepreneurship, financing a business, all kinds of things that you would find educational and useful. These are just a couple of the examples here. And in this portal, these are some of the other things you can learn about in the portal. These portals are customized to each individual client, so you have your own personal passcode to get in and out of it. It's yours exclusively. I encourage all my clients is to go in there and take a look at it, or anybody who's considering it, take a look at it, complete the exercises. They're complimentary, they're free. Complete the exercises. If you want to engage our service to help you coach you through it, all you have to do is schedule a time on our calendars to do so. But these are free complimentary exercises that we provide. So kind of went through this pretty fast. Hopefully you've got some idea of as your thoughts as you think about maybe transitioning from the corporate world into business ownership. Again, the key really is education and learning and exploring, giving yourself permission. And then once you've educated yourself and learned, it's aligning with the right businesses for you in order to continue that discovery and validation. So with that, I'm going to pause and I'm going to open it back up. And if anybody has any questions or I've put things in chats, we'd love to answer anything you might have.
Hey, Joe and Chip, we do have 2 questions.
Sure.
One that came in and said, do you have any data points on how many non-franchise but already established businesses acquired from a retiring owner, for example, succeed or fail?
I don't have any data points, but what I can say is, look, that can be a very viable path, and I'm sure Joe has had them. I've had a lot of clients that I worked with that we determined that, or they determined by going through this process that was actually the best path for them, right? Entrepreneurship can look like a lot of different things, right? You can start a business from scratch. You can buy an existing business, you can invest in a franchise. Not one of those is right for everybody. You know, in my personal case, I wasn't comfortable starting from a blank canvas, and so franchising gave me structure, and I did not feel that I was capable of running an existing business if I were to buy it from somebody. But that was just me. What I can tell you is there's a lot of due diligence that goes on in acquiring an existing business. And usually that's where things fall apart. So there's a lot of diamonds in the rough out there, and that's a wonderful opportunity. If you can find a business that has been run very well by an owner who will help you in that transition, and where the goodwill of the business is not going to go with the owner, that can be a wonderful opportunity.
Right.
Don't look at just price points. One thing that I do know is businesses at lower investment thresholds tend to close at a higher rate than high investment businesses because people don't have skin in the game. Okay. And what I would tell you is, even though a franchise investment can seem intimidating or an existing business investment can seem intimidating, if you're not willing to invest in yourself, then you may not should be in business for yourself anyway. So don't look at cost as the deciding factor. I recognize it's an important characteristic, but it shouldn't be the deciding factor. So yes, that can be a very viable path for you. You just want to make sure that through the due diligence, you've got clarity on the numbers. As I mentioned, a lot of that falls apart in due diligence when you can't get accurate financials. So that's a big part of it. Just understand what the owner role is, how training is going to happen, and make sure that the goodwill of the business doesn't go with the owner. Just like with franchising, you want to make sure that you're adequately capitalized. You want to make sure that you have more working capital than you think you need, because even if it's an existing business, you will burn through cash in the transition.
Okay, we have.
I'm sorry if I may, Andrea, just jump in real quick because I actually totally agree with Chip. And actually, my first business was a resale, so I completely understand what this person's asking the question. So My first business was a resale business, and it was actually here in the Charlotte area. And I agree with Chip. What I needed to understand, and my role was really for the first 6 to 9 months of business ownership, my role was repairing relationships. And so that's going into understanding what's the business like. So the previous owner had damaged a lot of relationships with clients and customers. So I had to go in and I wasn't really, that was my main focus for the first 6 to 9 months, was repairing those relationships before I could do anything else. So I think it goes back to Chip's point, is doing those due diligence and understanding it's not wrong. It's just you have to understand what's the due diligence behind it. What role are you going to play initially in that business, and where's the shortcomings of that business possibly. So I love that. I also happen to see a question in there about compensation. How does Chip and I generate compensation? Well, really, we do it two ways. Financially, we get compensated is if and when a client is awarded a franchise business, and if and when they choose to buy that business, we receive a referral fee from that franchisor. So think of like real estate agents, where a real estate agent will help you find a business, or I'm sorry, help you find a home. You're not paying them anything. And so our structure is the same way. But ultimately, the way Chip and I get compensated is that hopefully we provide a tremendous education and value and experience for our clients, that they're going to want to refer family and friends, write recommendations and reviews. So we, just like a real estate agent, our services and experiences are more important to us probably than the actual financial compensation part of it.
Great. Great. Thanks, Brian. I don't know if you want to, you can see the chat or not. I don't know if you want to speak to this, but I do hear this, fear of the franchise fees, right?
Mhm.
They go on and on and on, and then, the franchisee can't make a profit. Do you want to speak to that just quickly?
Sure.
Sure.
Would you like to take that, Chip? Or
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Look, there are fees involved in franchising. A
Right.
franchisor, and just for terminology's sake, the franchisor, think of it as the parent entity. Franchisees are the individual business owners. It's kind of in the best situations, it's perfect alignment. Franchisor does better when the franchisees do better, and vice versa. But franchise companies, the franchisors, they don't make their money long term awarding licenses to individuals. Dunkin' Donuts doesn't make money selling donuts. Dunkin' Donuts corporate makes money from the fees that those franchisees pay to the corporation. And in theory, that franchisee should get something in exchange for those fees, whether it's the future vision of the business, whether it's the support. So the franchise fees do exist. In certain situations, they can seem exorbitant, but it's a give and take. In the restaurant industry, you have very low fees, but you also have very low margins. In service businesses, sometimes you have higher fees, but you have much larger margins. The important thing is to understand what you're getting in exchange for that. And through the validation process that Joe talked about, one of the most important things is having conversations with franchise owners. You can talk to development people all the time, and you should, but you need to talk to the owners. And part of the process is having those conversations. Talk to the people that are out there living it. They're the ones that can tell you all the good, the bad, and the ugly. They're the ones that can tell you this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, or they may tell you turn and run the other way. But those are the people you can ask, what are you getting in exchange for your fees? Do you feel that it's worth it? And I would tell you that if you have those conversations and a bunch of franchisees tell you what I'm getting is not fair, that's a pretty big red flag.
Right.
So yeah, look, but the fear is normal, and that's what a lot of people think. Hey, these companies bleed me dry, but that's actually not the case. It should be perfect alignment where one does better because the other one does better.
Okay,
and if
great.
I could add to that, there's full transparency, right? Because a franchise is a regulated entity by the state and the government, and they produce what's called an FTD document, a franchise disclosure document. And in that is going to be all these fees. Every fee that is charged has to be in that document. So you're going to, as a client, you're going to be able to see those fees. And then to Chip's point, you're going to be able to validate those fees with the franchisors. But that, again, it goes back to filling the gaps that I mentioned earlier. Is what I'm paying for my fees, is it going to provide me the gap filler that I'm looking for and the support in order to be successful? I will offer to to the group is that most royalty, it's called a royalty, is how you pay the franchise fees. It's called a royalty, and usually it's a percentage of revenue. So if you think about it, if even if it's 10% as an example, if you're not generating any revenue, then you're not paying any fees. And if you are, and so really the franchisor has a vested interest in helping you be successful at Chip's point, because 10% of $1 million is something as opposed to 10% of nothing. So even though you might be paying a royalty, you're not paying it unless your business is growing, quite honestly. And then part of the experience is you want to definitely learn, again, what am I getting from my money, and is there value there?
Yeah, and
Good question,
the other nice thing, and look, right, in any business is going to have costs and fees, right? They're just going to be called different things. If you're an independent business owner, you're going to have marketing costs, you're going to have advertising costs, and they're going to be paid to a third party. Sometimes in a franchise system, you have marketing and advertising fees that are paid to the franchisor who's providing those services to you. So a lot of times it's just different cost buckets. The biggest difference that Joe talked about is the royalties, and those are the ongoing fees in exchange for brand management and the support that the franchisor has provided. The upfront fee, the franchise fee itself, that's the upfront investment, and that's your equity in the business on day one. That's what gives you the rights to own and operate the business under the brand standards that franchisor has created. That's an amortizable business expense, and it does represent your ownership in the entity.
Something
Great.
else to consider that I would encourage all the listen or viewers to consider is creating a pro forma statement. We encourage all of our clients to create a pro forma statement if and when they get to the point where they're looking at businesses. So that's something else you're going to want to look at: a 1, 3, and 5 year pro forma statement. You're going to want to put in the information from those individual franchisors and understand what does that business look like over a 3 to 5 year period, and is it going to get me to where I want to go? And then you're going to validate that. So definitely you want to pull together a pro forma statement to help understand that.
Great. We have a couple more questions here. So, Ashley asks, is help only available for people looking to own a franchise or restaurant business, as well as I saw in the beginning that it was excluded? So I think she's looking for help with a restaurant. I think that's how I read that. Is help only available for people looking to own a franchise or a restaurant business, as well as I saw in the beginning that was excluded?
Well, I think Joe made the comment at the beginning that we typically don't work with a lot of the restaurant
Right,
businesses,
right,
and that's true. Look,
right.
but that's not 100%. There are businesses in our portfolio. It's just when people think about franchises, they tend to think
McDonald's.
about brick and mortar and these really large investments, and that can be intimidating.
Right.
But for somebody that has a background and understands what they're getting into, restaurant businesses can be great. Again, be careful because, if you love to cook and you think you want to own a restaurant, guess what, right? Owning a restaurant is very rarely about cooking. It's more about managing turnover and existing on really razor thin margins. But as long as you know those two things, it's great. Otherwise, you might end up buying yourself a job that you're going to hate. The service that we provide in the bigger picture, it's not even about business ownership. It's about life ownership and figuring out, right, if an entrepreneurial path is right for you. We use franchising as a tool to give people the way to explore that. But all of us Joe and I both have clients that go through this entire journey and come out the other end with different perspectives. Sometimes it's, hey, I'm not cut out to be an entrepreneur. Now I know that. And isn't that a great thing to figure that out in advance? Sometimes it is, hey, yes, I am cut out to be an entrepreneur and I've got this great idea and now I've got the confidence and I understand funding. And so I'm going to go off and open my own business, right? Sometimes it's buying an existing business and sometimes it's investing in a franchise. So the outcome can be anything.
Great. Okay, so we have a lot of questions. This is wonderful. Another one is, how do I start a home health care or home assisted living? I know there's franchises in that sector, right? You want to speak to that?
Yeah, I'll jump on that because I've worked with a lot of clients that have started those businesses, and yes, that is very prominent in the franchise sector. Not exclusively, but it is a very large component of franchising, and a lot of the companies that you see out there I'm a client of those companies, and I've got a lot of clients that have started those businesses. And that's a really good example of, a mission with a margin. They are wonderful businesses. They are regulated by state. And so that's one of the things that a franchise can actually help you with, depending on what state you're in, is getting through those hoops because you can't run an unlicensed um, home health care agency.
She's got a follow-up question. I don't know if you could answer this, but where would I get government contracting clients and pay? I mean, that would all be through the franchise itself, right? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, generally speaking, or if you're non-franchise, you're kind of on your own because you got to figure out the marketing and customer acquisition strategy. Again, that's not a bad thing. That wasn't attractive to me. But for some people, they might get real energized with figuring out everything on their own. With a franchise system, generally they have marketing and advertising and customer acquisition that's been proven to work.
Wonderful. Right. Okay, so we're going to move on. We have a three-part question. How would an independent contractor or independent consultant find an appropriate franchisor? And what other business entities are appropriate for solo contractors or consultants? I don't know.
Yeah, I can take that one.
Sure.
I think Chip works with a lot of consultants and independent contractors, et cetera. I don't think that that's really the determining factor. I think the determining factor goes back to what is it that you want to get accomplished and what are your goals in going through the exercises. And there are a lot of businesses out there that you can kind of morph and merge your consulting business if you or your idea into that particular franchise, or you can learn about that particular franchise. So there actually is a lot of franchises out there that I'll say a consultant can learn about, whether it be appropriate for them or not. But again, it's more about arrive. I can't stress enough. It's more about arriving at where you need to be, not predetermining. And that's okay if you want to arrive at, say, a consulting business, but every consulting business is different, and they may not deliver the financial goals that you've set for yourself, or they may require more or less time. And to Chip's point, some may provide client acquisition, marketing strategies, and national call centers and so forth to help you scale your business, and others may not. So it's important to kind of define some of those other characteristics along the way.
Right. I mean, it's a wonderful process, right? Because you might think you want this, but then until you go through your process, that may not be really the best thing for you, right?
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. And look, I work with people all the time that are subject matter experts in something, right? They're whatever they do, right? And so the natural progression to that is to think, well, I should go out and be a consultant. And sometimes that's absolutely right. But what holds a lot of people up is when you are a consultant, you have to go out and find people with whom to consult. So there's a lot of business development that's inherent in successful consulting, and that's something that can make people really uncomfortable. There was a question here about just the correct legal entity for being a consultant, and there really isn't an answer to that. Sometimes your legal entity is based on the way that you've set up the funding for your business, right? Different types of funding might require you to be an S corporation or a C corporation or have a LLC. But with any business, I would say I would not be comfortable unless there were some entity that was the business to separate me from that business.
Great. Thank you. And then we have one last question from Marie. She's following up. Uh, oh, um, there's more. Oh, okay. So, where do you in North Carolina, where do you open a home health assisted living? I would assume that depends on the franchisor and the markets that are open, something along those lines, right? I mean,
Well,
at least,
that's an industry where need usually outpaces supply.
right.
So I'd say there's any market anywhere in the US where there is a need for those types of businesses. Some markets may be more saturated than others.
Right.
Franchise companies can help you figure that out. To start something independent, it's a little bit more difficult to do the research, but again, that is such a needed business. And West Palm Beach, yeah, I'm not sure there are any people in West Palm Beach that are retired and that might be one of the best markets in the country for it. So
Okay, and then of course this is for you. I mean, how do we access your complimentary self-assessment tools to discover if business ownership is right for that person? So I would assume your QR code or
You
Oh,
use a
Absolutely,
QR
that's
code. Yeah, whoever's
yeah.
glasses you like better, because the rest, otherwise we look the same.
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, just scan one of our QR codes. That'll take you to our calendar. Give us your information, and we'll be more than happy to send that to you. Or if you want our information's on here, if you want to email us, you can do that too. And I know either way, just reach out to one of us, and we'll get you what you need for sure.
Great, thank you. This was a wonderful session. I think that pretty much concludes all of the questions. I do have to share my screen again, and it's gonna let me do it. Maybe not. Only one panelist can share at a time, so somebody has to stop.
I just stopped sharing. I think maybe that'll help.
Doesn't look like it. Yep, it does. That did it. Thank you. So for the people that are still on the call, I do have just a quick little video that I have to run that talks about donating for SCORE Charlotte. We here are always looking for some sort of donations. We do get our funding from the SBA, but of course it's been in the news that some of that funding has been cut. So if you do like these programs, if you have any bandwidth to give us a donation, we certainly welcome that. So if you just hang tight and just listen to our little video here. It's going to play. Maybe it's not going to play. Let's see here.
Before we wrap up, I want to take just 1 minute to say thank you for joining us today. We know your time is valuable, and we're honored you chose SCORE to help you grow your business. Now, SCORE has always offered these webinars free of charge. But here's the reality. Due to changes in federal funding, some of our support has been delayed or even cut. And while we're committed to keeping these programs free, we need your help to do it. Think of it like this. 6 Today's webinar gave you real value. Maybe leave us a little tip, the way you would for a waitress who gave great service. Or maybe you want to give forward so the next entrepreneur can benefit just like you did. We're only asking if it's within your means. If it's not, please just keep learning and growing with us. But if you can give $5, $10, $25, whatever feels right will be directly helping us keep these webinars free for everyone. There's a secure link in the chat. Takes less than a minute to make a difference. Thank you again for being here, for your energy, and for supporting SCORE's mission to help entrepreneurs thrive.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. So with that, I've also put in the link if you do want to feel the need to donate to us. The link is in the chat. And with that, we're going to conclude this webinar. I thank you, Joe and Chip. I think this was great content. And then Chip, you just put in your information. Both of you put in your information, right? If you guys, anybody wants to reach out to them directly, their information is in the chat. Within the next couple of days, everybody will receive a copy of a recording and a copy of the slide deck. And if you have any questions, just reach out to us. And thank you guys very much. Great content today. Enjoy.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Good luck.
Thank you. Bye-bye.